This is part 1 of Denari name segmenter training. We're going to start by creating a new name segment. We'll go to the Donors tab and then down here Name Segmenter. And here we see a list of segments that have already been created and saved by somebody here in the training company. A segment is really a filter tool. It allows you to reach into your pot of names and pull out only those names that match some set of filters. And in this case, our segments can be saved and run over and over again in the future if we want to. And so that's the list of segments that someone has already saved. We're going to go ahead and click on Add New to create a new segment. And this is a fairly slow page to load, so a little delay here is normal. The first thing we're going to do is give this a description. The description is for you. It tells you what this segment is about. I'm just going to make this Training 2. You can put anything you want in this field. Again, it's just simply so that when you see it on that list that we just saw a minute ago, you'll know what the segment is about. The segment code is for Denari. I'm going to make this rather simple. I'm just going to make it train and then underscore in my initials. The code tells Denari that this segment is different from any other. So you just want to make it real simple and basic. Doesn't need to be anything fancy. It just has to be unique. You can't have two name segments with the same code. But other than that, that's really all you need. Now, these are the only two required fields in a name segment. We don't need to put anything else in this segment. If we run this name segment now, we will get all of our names. And that is an important concept because it means that we don't have to put filters into the segment in order to get names out. We're only going to use those filters that are relevant. So all the things that you're going to see on this filter training section of name segmenter training, you don't have to use any of them at all, ever. We're starting out with all of our names. So we're just going to reach into the pot and pull out the names that we want. We're going to begin here with classes in. Classes stands for classifications. And so those are the codes that you've already created and assigned to some of your donors. Now we want to use those classifications to produce a list of names. Here's the page. Should look fairly similar to the page you see over in your name record. There are 5 categories here of classifications and several classifications in each one of those categories. By the way, you can have as many classifications as you want, and you can assign as many as you want to any one donors, but you are kind of stuck with these 5 categories, whatever they are, although you can rename those categories. So let's say we've already created this classification called large donors, and we've assigned it to a bunch of people, and now we want to get a list of those people. Maybe we're going to do a mailing, and so we just simply select it there and we move it over. Now when we run this, Denari goes through and finds all the name records that have large donor classification, and it puts it into the output that we select. Pretty simple. Now if we go, let's say we also want all the people who are large donors from the Boise church. So we select that classification down in this category and we move that over. Now when we run this segment, we get anybody who has the classification of large donor and Boise church. In other words, there is an AND operator between these categories. AND means that both of these have to be true. In order for a name record to show up in the output, they have to have the large donor classification and they have to have the Boise church classification. Now let me put that back and let's pick one up here that makes a little more sense. Let's just pick Spanish and we'll move that over. Now when we run this segment, we get anybody who has the classification large donors or Spanish. And so what that means is that there is an OR operator inside the category or inside the boxes. So that simply means that they can have either one of these. They can have large donor or Spanish. Let's go back down here and put in Boise church. Now when I run this, I get anybody who has large donor and Boise church or Spanish and Boise church. So it gives me a lot of flexibility in how I can pull names out of our data. And of course I can use as many of these classifications in whatever combinations here that I want. So whatever I've got available I can use in that way. So remember, AND operator between the boxes, and OR operator inside the boxes. Now, there is a little bit of an exception. Right next to the classes in button, there's this little box called Assume OR. If that box is checked, then the AND operator between the boxes turns into an OR operator. So now if that box is checked, when I run this, I get anybody who has a classification of large donors or Spanish or Boise Church. Any one of those three will put them in the output. Okay. Classes out works in much the same way, except that anything we select here removes people from the list. So it's quite common for people to have a classification called no mail, for example. So if somebody calls in and says, hey, remove it from your mailing list, one of the easiest ways to do this, create that classification and assign that to that name record. Now when you come here, you simply select it here, move it over to the selected side. Denari runs the name segment and finds all the people that the segment identifies, and then it removes anybody who has this classification of no mail. And again, the AND operator applies between the boxes and the OR operator inside the boxes. The assume OR, however, does not apply to classes out. It only applies to classes in. You might also have one called deceased, for example, and so you can assign that to those folks and remove them from your output as well. So classes out is really what gives classifications a lot of the flexibility that it has, because it allows you to kind of back into some of the lists of names of people that you want from time to time, and really kind of depends on your creativity. But there's no other code in Denari that allows you to use multiple codes in this way and exclude codes from the listing. So classifications by far is the most flexible way to code your donors. Now, below classes in, classes out, we have this gift segment field and this pledge segment field. We're going to be talking about these later on, but just let me say here that what it does is it allows you to create a gift segment and link that to the name segment, or a pledge segment, link it to the name segment, and the gift or pledge segment then becomes a filter for the name segment. So for example, let's say we want to get a list of all the people who gave gifts to a certain appeal code. Appeal code is not in this list of filters that are available to us here in name segmenter, because it is a gift characteristic. And you may remember from the introduction talking about characteristics, you're not going to find gift characteristics or pledge characteristics as filter options here in name segmenter. But the ability to link the gift segment to the name segment kind of adds that capability. So for example, we can again create that gift segment that identifies all the people who have given to that appeal code, link that gift segment to the name segment, and now we can output that list of names. And again, remember, name segmenter outputs names, not gift information or not pledge information. And so we might want to do a mailing to all those people that gave to that appeal, or all the people that gave in a certain date range, or all the people that have open pledges or closed pledges, or pledges to a certain appeal code or fund code, or pledges that have a certain start date, or pledges that are credit card pledges or EFT pledges, etc. So all of those capabilities get added to the name segment by being able to link the gift segment and the pledge segment to the name segment. And as we cover gift segmenter and pledge segmenter, this will make a little bit more sense to you, but it's helpful to point out here that these two fields are here for you. Now, again, just let me emphasize that no filters are required here. We can start out with absolutely no filters at all and get every single name in our data, and that name segmenter is going to filter on name characteristics and output name characteristics. We'll be looking at output later in the various forms that you can get those names in, but it's important to keep those things in mind as we move forward. In the next section, we're going to cover some of the rest of these filter options that are all located under these blue bars, and we'll begin with giving statistics.